for, I mean, this is the second flight of Calypso, for example, and our capsule that's being right here manufactured and getting ready to go fly next year. They're a really clean spacecraft.
A testament to the teams, for sure. All right, 2 hours, 4 minutes, 35 seconds and counting until liftoff of NASA's Boeing crew flight test. 2 NASA astronauts flying in the Starliner spacecraft for the first time, headed to the International Space Station. On the way up, there's one particular person we've heard throughout the day, mostly communicating with the crew. So let's head over to Brandy Dean and Jim May to learn more about the Capcom role inside Mission Control in Houston.
Thanks, Megan. The Capcom role has been around as long as NASA has been sending people to space. It's shorthand for capsule communicator, but it's used even when there's not a capsule to communicate with. For instance, there's a Capcom today in the International Space Station Flight Control Room working with the space station crew. For the Starliner's case, though, the name is entirely accurate as Starliner is a capsule.
Letting you know, crew insertion is complete, and we are starting hatch closure prep and standing by for weather brief.
Roger. Historically, the Capcom role has been exclusively held by astronauts, with the thought being that an astronaut would know best what another astronaut in space needs to know in any given situation. But when International Space Station began operating 24/7, 365 days per year, NASA no longer had enough astronauts to constantly fill that Capcom position. So now it's often held by training instructors and flight controllers who have worked closely with the astronauts previously and have a good understanding of the information that they need. But for extremely dynamic situations like launch and landings, you'll often see an astronaut back in that seat.
And that's the case today. You've heard Canadian Space Agency astronaut Joshua Kutrick a few times already this morning, including with some voice checks that he did with the crew on behalf of Houston. He will be the voice you hear talking to the crew all the way through Starliner's ascent. He'll be speaking with Butch and Sunny as they make their way into orbit, and he is particularly suited for the job since he'll be on Starliner for its next flight, Starliner 1. He is assigned to the crew along with NASA astronaut Scott Tingle and, of course, our very own Mike Fink with us today. And a fourth crew member will be assigned later.
So we heard some comm checks with the crew after they got into the capsule. They're a little bit ahead of schedule, so those comm checks have already happened. But we are expecting hatch closure to come soon, and then another set of audio checks over the air-to-ground loop a little later as they get closer to launch. So now let's head back to Florida with Megan D. and Mike.
All right, so Mike, I want to take a look at the clock again. We are well ahead of schedule. Hatch closure preps underway. We had till an hour and 37 minutes for those to have started. So great margin there. Really, the countdown's looking very smooth right now.
So far, so good, and I think it's because we have a lot of practice, and practice does make better. Not perfect, but better.
Yeah. And actually, while we're taking a look inside the White Room and our pad team members there, why don't we talk a little bit about each one? So we see number 4 there. That's Nate Keek-Franson, and he is the pad team lead. Manages the fluids team, who performs a variety of tests from leak checks to acceptance testing of integrated vehicle subsystems. He thinks he has, quote, the coolest job in the whole company, and feels honored to make this contribution to our company. We see number 6 there on the left. That's Garrett Pinder, mechanical technician. He helped build the rig that opens and closes the hatch, and he will close the hatch today. Folks describe him as the guy who can troubleshoot just about anything, and he has been on Starliner since day 1 and said he would be the first to fly it if he could. He has that much faith and pride in the spacecraft. Again, Garrett Pinder, number 6, left hand of your screen there. Number 8, we have Kaysen Chernault, quality engineer and inspector, assisting crew with external tools and gear, suiting up prior to entry. Grew up on the Space Coast watching every launch and says being on the pad team is an honor and feels like the culmination of a lifetime of admiring and working in human spaceflight.
And we saw Kaysen and Michael DiCarlo, and Michael's number was 7. Those were the 2 that went to meet Butch and Sunny down at the base of the pad.
RC, conduct weather briefing on Channel 8, Weather Conference Net.
Roger.
Yeah, Michael is the systems engineering technician, performs final cabin leak check that we'll see later on in the countdown. This is his 110th launch to work. He said as a child of the 70s, he'll tell Butch and Sonny it's time to rock and roll before a hatch close.
And Michael's also a great welder, and he helps put some of our pressure control systems or some of our tubing together. It's really really tricky. So he's definitely world class at his job.
And then finally, we have number 5, Armando Loli. Mike, you were talking a little bit about him. You were hearing him do the comm checks within Starliner during ingress. Now, he's the senior project engineer covering Boeing's Florida Space Coast. Has been part of the build and development of Starliner since the beginning.
He also has helped Boeing build a very interesting virtual reality headset that we can use to train ahead of time with Starliner, not just for the astronauts, but for the technicians as well as managers, so everyone understands what Starliner looks like inside and where all the parts are without actually having to get inside the spacecraft and taking it apart.
Yeah,